I stood at the doorstep with a pie in my hands, snow gathering in my hair, heart pounding louder than the holiday music I could faintly hear through the walls. The house I helped pay for, the family I never stopped supporting, the people I sacrificed everything for, they were all inside. Laughing, celebrating. I rang the doorbell again. After a few seconds, the door opened, and my father stared blankly at me like I was a stranger from the street. "Sorry," he said with a confused tilt of his head. "I think you have the wrong house." I laughed a little, thought he was joking. I said, "Dad, it's me." But his face didn't change, just cold eyes and silence. "Seriously?" I asked. He shook his head once. "We're having a private gathering. I don't think you were invited." I took a step back, stunned. I wanted to believe it was a mistake. Maybe they were pulling some ridiculous prank. But the way he stood, firm, indifferent, told me everything. I turned around and walked down the driveway, snow crunching under my boots. My breath caught in my throat, not from the cold, but from something heavier, something breaking. Seconds later, my phone buzzed. It was my brother. "Layla," he said, "don't be upset, but you know we couldn't let you in." I said nothing. He continued, "It's just things are already tense. You being there would have made it worse." I said one word, "Understood." And I was about to hang up when he didn't. His voice carried on. "She still thinks helping with rent means she's automatically included." Someone laughed in the background. My dad, probably. Or maybe my cousin. I couldn't tell. I didn't care. I stared at my phone. My ears ringing. My face numb. I had helped with rent for 3 years. Covered utilities. Paid off the heating bill last winter when Dad said his pension hadn't cleared. Gave my brother money for books. Helped with groceries. Paid for Dad's medication when insurance failed. Not once did I ask for anything back. Not once did I hold it over them. Not once did I think I had to. But apparently I was just the help, not the family. That night, I sat in my one-bedroom apartment, the one they mocked for being small but expensive, and I opened my laptop. I logged into every account I shared with them. The rent auto-transfer? Cancelled. The joint grocery card? Blocked. Streaming services? Logged out from all devices. Their emergency contacts? Changed. I didn't say a word. I didn't send a single message. No angry texts. No emotional confrontations. Just silence. The kind of silence that echoes. My name is Layla, and from wherever you're watching this video, stay with me. Because turns out being useful doesn't mean being loved, and being loved doesn't mean being respected. I wasn't always the outsider. At least, not at first. When Mom left, I was 13. My brother, Adam, was 7. She packed 2 suitcases and kissed our foreheads like she was heading out for groceries, not disappearing for good. My dad didn't chase her. He just lit a cigarette and said, "She was never built for responsibility." Then he sat on the couch and didn't move for hours. That was the first day I cooked dinner. It wasn't good. Overboiled rice, burnt eggs. Adam still said thank you. By the time I turned 16, I was waking up at 5 a.m. to work a bakery shift before school. After class, I cleaned houses. On weekends, I babysat for families who looked at me like I was charity in motion. All while Dad stayed home. Depression, he said. Bad back, he said. No one argued because no one else was there to pick up the pieces. Except me. When I graduated, college was an option. Not because I wasn't smart. I had the grades, the drive, the letters of recommendation. But tuition was a joke when you're choosing between rent and groceries. So I deferred. Then deferred again. Eventually, I stopped checking the deadlines. Instead, I worked. 3 jobs. Every month, I slid envelopes of cash into the kitchen drawer. Rent, electric, water. Sometimes there was a note for Adam's field trip or Dad's inhaler. I always covered it. Quietly. I watched Adam grow up in clean sneakers with a working tablet and school lunches packed from the expensive aisle. I watched Dad stay still. Watching TV, flipping channels like flipping responsibilities. No one ever said thank you. But I didn't do it for that. I just wanted to matter. I wanted to be seen. The sad truth is, I didn't want praise. I just wanted presence. For someone to look at me and see more than a paycheck with legs. But even that was too much to ask. When Adam graduated high school, he got accepted into college. They threw a party for him. Balloons, cake, speeches. I remember standing in the corner, clapping. No one mentioned I covered his admission deposit, or the laptop he unwrapped, the one I paid for. They said, "Look how far he's come." No one asked how. When he called me his second mom during his speech, I smiled so hard my jaw hurt. And when someone said, "Layla, you're like the backbone of this family," I nodded like it was a compliment, not a confession. Because I didn't want to be the backbone. I wanted to be a daughter, a sister, a person, not a structure they leaned on and forgot existed. But I kept giving. Every Christmas, I bought more gifts than I could afford. Every birthday, I cooked. Every emergency, I was first to show up. Because I thought, maybe if I gave enough, I'd finally be enough. But kindness, when given without boundaries, turns invisible. And mine did. They didn't ignore me because they hated me. They ignored me because they never thought I'd leave. It didn't happen all at once. That would have been easier to name. But cruelty doesn't always come with a slam. Sometimes it's a slow fade. It started with the group chat, the one labeled Fam Red Heart. I used to get dozens of messages a day. Random memes from Adam. Dad's blurry photos of dinner. Forwarded good morning messages from distant aunties. Then the messages stopped. Or rather, my notification stopped. I opened the chat one night, just curious. They were planning something. A barbecue at Aunt Maya's. I scrolled. They'd been talking about it for 2 weeks. Carpooling, menu planning, inside jokes about potato salad. I searched my name. Nothing. I sent a simple message. "What time should I come?" No reply. The next morning, the chat name had changed. Now it just read Sunday Crew. No heart. No Layla. I told myself it was an accident. Maybe they thought I was busy. Maybe they assumed I wouldn't want to come. It was easier to believe that than to admit the truth. I was being phased out from my own blood. A few weeks later, I came home from work earlier than usual. My feet ached, my head pulsed from deadlines. I paused in the hallway when I heard Adam on the phone in the kitchen. "She's not really family," he laughed. "More like our roommate with money." There was a pause, then more laughter. "No, I'm serious. She's always working anyway. We barely see her. But she pays rent, covers the bills, and cooks when she's around. So it works out." I didn't move. I didn't cry. I just walked quietly to my room, shut the door, and sat down at my desk. That was the moment something inside me split, not shattered, not exploded, just quietly broke away and never came back. I didn't confront him. What would have been the point? They'd already rewritten me in their story. I was no longer a sister, no longer a daughter. I was a service, a support beam, a standing order. So I started observing. When Dad asked if I could front the electricity bill just for now, I paid and then saved the receipt. When Adam borrowed money for textbooks, I Venmo'd him and took a screenshot. I made copies, backed up emails, archived every digital transaction, every transfer, every favor disguised as a casual request. Not out of spite, out of preservation. Because I finally understood that love given to the undeserving is a dangerous kind of debt, and I was the one accumulating interest. I stopped asking to be included. I stopped reminding them I existed. I started becoming what they already saw, a shadow. But even shadows learn. Even shadows grow teeth. And silence, the kind that watches and waits, is sometimes the most dangerous sound in the world. The next morning, I sat at the edge of my bed, stared at the sunlight pooling through the blinds, and made a decision, not from rage, but from razor-sharp clarity. I wasn't going to beg to belong anymore. I wasn't going to explain myself to people who saw me as an ATM with a pulse. So I started with the rent. I opened my bank app and redirected the automatic payment. For the first time in years, I moved it to a new account. One under my name only, a savings account titled Exit. I didn't tell them. Next, the grocery card. The one they always used without asking, swiping it for snacks, takeout, shopping sprees disguised as essentials. I froze it, canceled the old card, requested a new one, digital only, delivered to my email. No physical copy. No more borrowing. Then came the utilities. I called every company I'd been paying under my name: electricity, gas, internet. Quietly transferred responsibilities or closed accounts altogether. I made sure no unpaid bills could follow me. No loose threads. No trace. Then I signed a lease. A small studio on the other side of town. Cozy. Quiet. Not glamorous, but mine. The landlord gave me the keys 2 days after I applied. Clean record, great credit, he said. Wish more tenants were like you. Funny. At home, I was a burden. Here, I was reliable. I packed at night, piece by piece. Clothes, documents, the laptop I'd bought with my own bonus. I left behind the things they gave me, not out of spite, but principle. If they only saw my worth in material, they could keep the scraps. The morning I moved out, no one noticed. Dad was still asleep. Adam had left for the gym. I didn't leave a note. Just silence. That same day, I made a file, digital and hard copy, labeled proof. Every bank transaction, every payment, every invoice, every screenshot of the things they said, the things they took. I wasn't planning to sue. I wasn't even planning to speak. But I wanted to own my story. Because the truth is, I never wanted revenge the way people think of it. Slash tires, screaming matches, public showdowns. That wasn't my style. No, what I wanted was something cleaner. Sharper. I wanted them to face themselves. To look around one day and realize the scaffolding was gone. The house still stood, but the foundation was crumbling. And they wouldn't even know why. That's the thing about being taken for granted. People never imagine you might leave. They think your loyalty is eternal. Your love automatic. Your forgiveness endless. But I wasn't made to be a martyr. I was made to matter. And if they think I'm nothing without them, maybe it's time they find out who I really am. 3 days after I moved out, I watched the storm hit. It started with a call. Layla, Adam said, voice sharp with annoyance. Dad's key isn't working. Did you change the locks? I sipped my coffee, sitting cross-legged on the floor of my new studio. No furniture yet, just a mattress, a blanket, and the quiet hum of my space. I don't live there anymore, I said. A pause. What do you mean you don't live here? Where are you? I moved out, I said. Last week. You're joking. No. He scoffed. You're seriously ruining Christmas over a tantrum. I smiled. Not because it was funny, but because he still didn't get it. This isn't a tantrum, Adam. It's balance. Click. I turned my phone face down and let it vibrate against the floor. They called. Then texted. Then called again. Dad. Adam. Aunt Maya. Even cousins I hadn't heard from in months. Each message more frantic than the last. Layla, this is ridiculous. Come on, we need the rent. You're being selfish. Dad's furious. At least give us access to the electric bill. It's overdue. I didn't answer. Instead, I logged into the power company's portal, checked the account, now closed under my name, and watched the pending balance climb. By midnight, my phone had 27 missed calls. By morning, they didn't want me back. They just wanted what I gave. Dad left a voicemail. His voice was tight, forced calm barely hiding desperation. I don't know what game you're playing, but you need to grow up. Family doesn't abandon each other. I almost laughed at that. Abandon? Where was that concern when I stood on the porch with a pie in my hands and he said I had the wrong house? Now suddenly I was family again? I turned off my phone. Let them scream into a void. There's a silence you carry when you've been the giver for too long. A silence so heavy it feels like armor. And once you stop speaking, once you stop explaining, once you stop begging to be heard, they panic. Because silence means power has shifted. They can't argue with a wall. They can't manipulate a ghost. And that scared them more than any fight ever could. I spent that day folding laundry in peace, walking to the corner store, buying a candle just because I liked the scent. Small things. Ordinary things. But they felt mine. I didn't post anything online. No cryptic messages. No clapbacks. Just silence. Because the best revenge wasn't proving them wrong. It was showing them they never even knew who I was to begin with. They saw a wallet. I became a wall. And the calls kept coming. It took exactly 13 days for everything to start falling apart. The first was the power. Aunt Maya called me. Not to ask if I was okay, not to check in, but because Dad had called her in a panic. "The lights just shut off," she said. "Your dad says something's wrong with the account." I didn't bother explaining. I simply said, "I'm not on the account anymore. They'll have to call the company." Click. Then came the landlord. An email landed in my inbox. "Hi, Layla. Rent for this month hasn't been received. Is everything all right?" I smiled. He still thought I lived there. I replied, attaching the signed lease termination letter and forwarding the final payment receipt. Simple, professional. "Please direct all future communications to Mr. Farouk and Adam Khan. I am no longer a tenant." An hour later, he called them. I heard from a friend of a friend that Dad flipped. Said I'd blindsided him. Said I was acting out. But it wasn't a performance. It was the first time I stepped off their stage. The cracks deepened. Adam's tuition payment didn't go through. The grocery card stopped working. Dad's medication refill was declined at the pharmacy. They tried logging into the Wi-Fi, only to realize the account was closed. One by one, the threads I'd been quietly holding unraveled. I wasn't there to watch it happen. I didn't need to be. Their silence had always been loud enough. Now mine roared. That weekend, a family gathering took place. Photos trickled onto social media. Poses, plates, plastic smiles. But in every comment section, there it was, "Where's Layla? Did she take the photo? No tag for Layla?" I didn't respond, but they saw it. The questions, the absence, the shifting tide of attention. Monday morning, Adam called. Again. This time he didn't sound angry. He sounded small. "Layla, please," he whispered. "We need to talk." I let him talk. He stammered about confusion. Said things were blown out of proportion. That Dad was just stressed, and you know how he is. Then the kicker. "You didn't have to leave. This is your home too." I paused, letting the weight of the lie settle in his own throat. Then I said, "You told someone I wasn't really family, just a roommate with money. Remember?" He was silent. "You said I didn't belong," I added softly. "So I made it true." Click. No shouting, no drama, just a full stop. They thought I'd always be there, always giving, always loyal, because love to them was supposed to mean sacrifice without limits. But I'd learned something they never taught me. Love isn't real when it costs you yourself. And family that only shows up when the light's off and the fridge is empty? That's not family. That's a transaction. And this time I was done paying. For the first time in years, I woke up and didn't feel like I owed anyone anything. No errands waiting. No bills I had to cover that weren't mine. No guilt stretching across my shoulders like a second skin. Just me. A window cracked open to let in the morning air, and the sound of a city moving outside, without demanding a piece of me. That's when I knew I was finally free. I started therapy. Not because I was broken, but because I was tired of pretending I wasn't hurt. My therapist, Marisol, never asked me, "Why didn't you leave sooner?" She just said, "It takes time to understand what we deserve." And for the first time, I cried without feeling weak. Work got better too. I wasn't dragging around invisible weight anymore. I had space to think, to create. I stopped volunteering for everything. Stopped saying yes just to be liked. And wouldn't you know it, they respected me more for it. 3 months later, my manager offered me a promotion. "Lead on this project," he said. "You've got the steadiness we need." Steady. Not stuck. Not struggling. Just steady. It felt good. I found friends too. Real ones. People who didn't just call when they needed a ride or a bailout. People who asked how I was doing and actually waited for the answer. There was a woman named Cam, a single mom from my yoga class. She once said, "You have the energy of someone who knows what silence costs." I smiled because I did, and she became one of the first people I led into my new place. It was mine, all mine. A 1-bedroom, second-floor apartment with a slanted ceiling and creaky floorboards. But it had plants on the sill, warm light in the evening, and a door that only opened for people I chose. I painted the walls soft green, bought second-hand furniture that still smelled like someone else's memories. But I made a home. And for the first time, home didn't feel like a performance. It felt like a belonging. Then one night I wrote something. Just a short post. A few paragraphs about growing up in a family that used love as currency. I called it The Cost of Being the Strong One. I hit publish. I didn't expect anything. But within days, the post spread. Hundreds of women commented, shared their own stories. I thought I was alone, one wrote. Another, you put into words what I couldn't say out loud. So I kept writing. Week after week, I shared stories, reflections, quiet truths. I called the blog The Silent Shift. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclamation. About how stepping away from people who drain you isn't betrayal, it's survival. I stopped apologizing for breathing differently, for wanting peace instead of performance, for choosing myself. And each time I hit publish, it felt like I was building something, not just for me, but for every girl who ever stood on a doorstep, holding a pie, waiting to be let in. Now I bake for myself. Light candles for joy, not to mask sadness. And I wake up knowing, this life is mine. Fully. Finally. It was a cold afternoon in December when I saw his name in my inbox. Subject line, can we talk? No other message. Just that. It had been 7 months since I left. Since I took my name off the rent, shut down the grocery card, disappeared from the chat threads and group photos. 7 months since I'd stopped being their personal scaffolding. I stared at the email for a full minute. Not with anger that had dissolved months ago. Not even sadness. Just recognition. He didn't want me. He wanted access. I didn't reply. Instead, I closed my laptop and poured myself a cup of tea. Lit a cinnamon candle. Sat by the window as dusk rolled in. It was Christmas Eve, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for someone to let me in. I was home. There was no big dinner this year. No forced small talk or empty toasts. Just a calm quiet, the kind that feels like a hug. I thought back to that snowy doorstep, the pie cooling in my hands, my father's cold eyes, my brother's careless words. It felt like a scene from someone else's life now. A chapter closed. They had taught me a lot in their own way. They taught me that love can be cruel, that some people will use the word family like a leash, that silence can be sharpened into a blade if you're not careful. But they also taught me something else without meaning to. They taught me how to leave, how to listen to the ache in my chest and finally do what it asked, how to stop performing worthiness for people too blind to see it, and most of all, how to come back to myself. I looked around my apartment, the little bookshelf I'd built by hand, the fairy lights blinking softly in the corner, the walls painted the exact shade of peace I always imagined. This wasn't revenge. It was release. I no longer needed apologies that wouldn't be sincere. No longer needed seats at tables where I had to beg for a plate. I had my own table now. Sometimes I still get messages. Distant cousins asking why I don't visit. Family friends saying they miss my energy. Even Adam texted last week, hope you're doing okay. Dad's been asking about you. I left them all unread. Not because I'm bitter, but because I'm better. Some doors you outgrow. Others you seal shut. And some you build from scratch. Thicker, warmer, wiser. That night, I curled up under my favorite blanket and whispered something to the stillness. I used to knock on doors that didn't open for me. Now I build my own, and I always leave it open for the right people. And this year, I was finally one of them. The morning I paid off the final loan, my mom barely looked up from her phone. She was standing at the kitchen counter, blending her second protein smoothie of the day, while I sat at the table with a bank confirmation email open on my screen, showing a $260,000 debt cleared to zero. It's done, I said. She turned, looked at me for half a second, and blinked like I'd told her the trash was out. Well, that's nice, honey, she said. Can you move your laptop? I need to wipe down the table. No hug. No thank you. No, you saved our home. I moved my laptop without saying a word. I had learned not to expect much. Not praise, not comfort, not even space to sit. We'd been living in the same house since I was born, a modest split level in the suburbs. They bought it before I was old enough to understand what mortgage meant. Years later, they nearly lost it because of poor investments and, even worse, spending habits. I was 25 when I stepped in, working 2 jobs, living on instant noodles, and still, I sent money, month after month, loan after loan, until the mountain shrank into dust. My brother, Sean, 2 years younger, never contributed a cent. He drove a leased BMW, bought $400 sneakers, had an Apple Watch before he had to resume. But they adored him. He was their golden boy. And I was the couch girl, literally, because after they gave Sean my old bedroom to turn into his gaming lounge, I slept on the living room couch. For almost a year, I paid their bills. They handed him my space. I never complained, not out loud, but then something happened that made my silence crack. One night, I came home from a late shift at the bookstore and walked in on all 3 of them laughing in the kitchen. My dad was mid-sentence. "She thinks she's the hero," he chuckled. "Always so serious, like we owe her a parade." Sean added, "She's lucky we let her live here rent-free." Rent-free, after I paid off their $260,000 debt. They didn't see me at first, but when they did, no one apologized. No one stood up or said, "We didn't mean that." My mom just tilted her head, smiled slightly, and said, "Don't take things so personally, Tessa. Your family." I nodded. Slowly, walked upstairs, past Sean's gaming room, my old room, looked at the door that still had my initials faintly scratched into the wood beneath his new neon Gamer Zone sign. And that's when I made a decision. Not in anger, not even in sadness, but in clarity. I had given them everything, and they treated me like I was lucky to be tolerated. They had no idea the deed I was about to pull, because they didn't know the one thing I never told them. The gift I gave them, I kept a copy, and soon I'd be taking it all back. My name is Tessa Clark, and from wherever you're watching this video, stay with me, because sometimes giving people the world makes them forget who built it. But when you take it back, brick by brick, that silence hits harder than any scream. People say favoritism is subtle. Not in my house. In my house, favoritism had a name, a birthday cake with extra frosting, and an allowance 3 times bigger than mine. His name was Sean. From the moment he was born, it was like my parents had finally gotten the child they really wanted. The loud one. The charming one. The boy. I became background noise. At 9, I made straight A's and got a polite nod. Sean brought home a C+ and got a pizza party. When I asked why, Mom said he tries so hard. "You're just naturally gifted, sweetie." By middle school, I was sharing secondhand clothes from my cousin Ashley, clothes Sean used to laugh at. I stopped asking for new jeans after the 3rd time my dad said, "We can't afford fashion shows." But we could afford Sean's soccer camps, his PlayStations, his birthday sleepovers with catered tacos and bounce houses. I convinced myself I didn't need those things, that being the easy child was better, safer. So I worked. At 15, I got a job bagging groceries after school. At 16, I started saving for college, even though they promised they'd help. I didn't trust promises, not in that house. When Sean crashed his first car at 17, they bought him another. When I asked to borrow the family car for a college tour, "Gas is expensive, Tess." I took the bus. Still I stayed. Through every belittled success, every joke about me being too intense or too old for my age. I stayed when my parents whispered about how Sean would probably make it big and how I'd at least be stable. Stable. That was the best I could hope for. Then came the debt. It started with a failed business, then a second mortgage. Credit card bills stacked like bricks on a kitchen table. One night, I overheard my dad on the phone. "We'll lose the house. I don't know what else to do." And like an idiot, I offered to help. I said I could move back in to save on rent, pick up extra hours, put some of my savings toward their debt, just until they got back on their feet. My mom cried, hugged me like I was oxygen. "You're our angel," she whispered. They let me believe I was saving them. But what they really wanted was a new cushion to land on. Sean didn't pitch in. Not once. He said debt wasn't his thing. And they laughed. They laughed. I thought if I gave enough, they'd see me, respect me, maybe even love me in the same glowing, unconditional way they loved Sean. But all it taught them was that I could be drained. And they drained me with a smile, until the day they mocked me in their kitchen, until I remembered the one thing I had never told them. I wasn't just the girl on the couch. I was the name on the deed. And I was done. Once the debt was gone, you'd think things would change. That they'd say thank you. That they'd recognize what it meant to hand over that kind of money. Years of savings, plans, stability. But no, they acted like a weight had been lifted, just not off me. It was like watching someone exhale after drowning you. A week later, my dad bought Sean a new car. Not used. Not reasonable. A brand new silver SUV with a giant red bow on top like a commercial. I came home from work and saw it in the driveway. Thought it was a neighbor's. Nope. My mom clapped her hands when Sean pulled up. Look how happy he is, Tessa. He deserves this. Deserves. Like he'd earned it. Like his jobless, door-slamming tantrums were worth rewarding, while I was still waking up sore from sleeping on a couch they wouldn't even let me fold out. I didn't ask questions. Didn't say, but what about the debt? Or where did the money come from? Because I already knew. They'd gotten used to me fixing things. And once the fire was out, they lit candles for the favorite child. At dinner, my dad toasted to new beginnings. Sean laughed and said, "Thanks for keeping the couch warm, sis." I didn't laugh. Not because I was offended, but because I finally saw it clearly. They thought I'd always be there. The responsible one. The quiet one. The doormat in sensible shoes who paid bills and kept her head down. I started to disappear after that. Quietly. Stopped joining dinners. Ate in my car. Stayed late at work. The house didn't feel like home. It felt like a waiting room I wasn't welcome in. Then one night, I overheard them talking again. My parents were in the den with one of my mom's friends from church. They didn't know I was in the hallway folding laundry. Her friend said, "Tessa's really done well for you guys." My mom snorted. "Tessa's intense. She makes everything dramatic. She just paid it off so we'd feel guilty forever." They all laughed. "Don't get me wrong," she added. "We're grateful, but you cannot live with her. Everything's a lecture." I folded another towel. Didn't cry. Didn't break. I just realized once and for all, I was never going to be anything but useful to them. Not loved. Not celebrated. Useful. And the moment you realize you've been treated like a resource, not a daughter, something inside you shifts. I had spent years trying to earn what they handed Sean for free. But I wasn't empty-handed, because I'd kept one thing to myself. A document. Signed. Notarized. Filed. And the only reason they were sleeping under that roof, eating in that kitchen, laughing in that living room, was because I allowed it. And that permission was about to expire. The day I signed the deed, I didn't tell a soul. It was a year ago. The bank had offered a deal. If I paid off the mortgage in full, I could assume ownership directly, since my parents were in default and technically no longer in good standing. No fuss, no family signatures required. So I did it. All $260,000. My name was the only one on the title. It wasn't meant to be revenge back then. It was protection for all of us, to make sure no one lost the house, to give us a second chance. But that was before I heard my mother tell her friend I was dramatic, before my dad said I owed it to them because they raised me, before Sean made a TikTok in his new car about how some people work, some people win the sibling lottery, before I realized they thought I would never leave. So I pulled out the folder from the back of my closet, the one marked with my initials and a little yellow sticky note. "Open if they forget who you are." Inside was the deed, my lawyer's contact, and a letter I'd been drafting for months. Not angry, not bitter, just factual. As sole owner of the property located at 184 Willow Drive, I am choosing to reclaim the space fully effective 30 days from this notice. I dropped it in the mail the next morning. Then I did the thing that scared me the most. I found my own apartment. Tiny. Unfurnished. A fourth-floor walk-up with a rusted balcony railing. But it was mine. I signed the lease, picked up the keys, and then called my lawyer. Send the letters. Within 3 days, my parents received official notification. They had 30 days to vacate or agree to rent under my terms. I knew what would happen. I knew they'd call it a joke. Tessa's just being dramatic again. She's bluffing. She wouldn't do that to us. They were wrong, because they weren't facing the version of me who begged for a bed. They were facing the version who read every line of the mortgage papers, paid the penalties, and kept receipts for a year just in case. The girl on the couch? She was gone. Now I was a woman with a pen and power. I didn't scream, didn't post online, didn't text Sean or my parents to warn them. I just waited and let the silence of legal paperwork do what my voice never could. I watched my phone light up with missed calls, ignored every "we need to talk," and spent my evenings painting my new walls the color of calm, because they had taken my room, my savings, and my dignity. But they never took the one thing I'd saved in secret: control. And now I was taking it all back. It was Sean who found the envelope first. I wasn't home when it happened, and that was intentional. He sent me a text. "WTF is this?" I didn't reply. An hour later, my mom called. Twice. Then again. Then once more just to leave a voicemail that started with, "Sweetheart, I think there's been a misunderstanding." There wasn't. What followed was predictable. A family group chat, dead for months, suddenly lit up like Christmas. "Mom, Tessa, what is this about reclaiming the house? That can't be right." "Dad, let's sit down and talk like adults. You don't have to do this." "Sean, you're being petty AF. This isn't what family does." Funny how the word family only showed up when I stopped being useful. I gave them a full day. Then I responded, "I've spoken to my lawyer. You can review the paperwork. You have 30 days to vacate or sign a rental agreement. Up to you." No emojis. No explanation. Just clarity. The next morning, I came home to find all three of them at the kitchen table, the same one they laughed around when they mocked me weeks before. Now, they weren't laughing. Mom stood first. "Tessa, we didn't mean any of that. It was just a joke. You've always been so sensitive." Dad added, "We were under a lot of stress. Debt does things to people." Sean didn't say a word. He just stared at me with that smug disbelief, like he couldn't fathom the idea that his older sister, the couch dweller, was capable of power. I didn't yell. I sat down across from them and placed a printed copy of the deed on the table. "This house is mine," I said. "Legally. Completely. You're welcome to stay if you sign the lease. Rent's fair. Month to month. Otherwise, I'll help you find somewhere else." "You'd really do this to your own family?" Mom whispered. "No," I said. "You already did." They didn't get it. Not the first time. Maybe not even now. They thought I wanted revenge. That I was angry, bitter, cold. But I wasn't. I was done. Done watching them throw parades for Sean while I balanced their ledgers. Done pretending I didn't hear the things they said when they thought I was asleep. Done being the one who gave and gave, only to be met with rolled eyes and a seat at the kids' table. This wasn't revenge. It was respect. Enforced. My way. Later that night, Sean stormed out. Slammed the door like a teenager instead of a grown man with designer sneakers he didn't pay for. My parents stayed quiet. And for once I slept in peace. On the couch. Still. But only for 25 more days. Because after that, they'd be the ones looking for a place to land. And I'd be unlocking the door to a life they never imagined I was strong enough to build. The apologies came fast. Not the kind that heal. The kind that smell like desperation. Sweet on the surface, spoiled underneath. Suddenly my mom was cooking again. Casseroles. Pies. That lemon chicken I used to love when I was 9. "Thought I'd surprise you," she said, setting the dish on the counter with a bright smile. My dad offered to help out with my laundry. Sean, he started using words like roommate instead of freeloader. He even said I could take my room back. "I'll move my stuff into the den. It's cool. You've earned it." I didn't say no. I didn't say yes. I said nothing. And somehow that silence said more than all my begging ever had. Because I could see it, the panic behind the pleasantries. The way they looked at me now, like someone who had become unpredictable. Not because I was angry, but because I had stopped needing them to love me. I moved differently. Came home late without explanation. Didn't eat what was cooked. Didn't ask for help, didn't offer it. They were used to me managing the finances, fixing the broken things, remembering birthdays, grocery lists, and insurance forms. Now they had to Google things. And guess what? They didn't like that version of independence. They missed the girl on the couch who folded napkins and made budget spreadsheets for fun. But she was gone. In her place was someone they never thought would last 5 days without their approval, now giving them 30 to pack up or pay up. My mom started hovering more, asking gentle questions. So, what are your plans after this? Will we still talk? You're not shutting us out forever, right? I gave her the same answer every time. A kind smile. No words. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is absolutely nothing. It forces people to sit in the echo of their own mistakes. I didn't slam doors, didn't give monologues or make them grovel. I just became unavailable. Not out of cruelty, out of growth. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't living to be loved. I was living to be whole. And as the boxes started stacking in corners, as the calendar ticked closer to day 30, my parents' energy shifted again. From apologetic to afraid. Because the truth they'd been running from was becoming real. I wasn't bluffing. I wasn't bending. And I wasn't coming back. On the morning of day 30, the house was quiet. Not silent quiet. The kind of quiet that knows it's the end. Boxes lined the hallway. A few labeled with Sean's name, others scrawled in my mom's handwriting. Things they never thought they'd pack. The night before, no one said anything. No pleading. No fake cheer. Just tension thick enough to cut with the same knife I once used to slice birthday cake for a family that forgot my name when the candles went out. I woke up early. Before the sun. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at the blank sheet of paper in front of me. For once, I wasn't writing a budget. I was writing my goodbye. Not a rage letter. Not a look what you did to me memoir. Just the truth. Here's what it said. You had a daughter who gave you everything. And you used her until she stopped asking to be seen. I'm not angry anymore. I'm free. I was never your second choice. I just acted like I was. That ends today. I signed it, folded it, left it in the center of the table, under my favorite mug, the chipped one no one else used. Then I grabbed my keys, my backpack, and my jacket from the back of the chair. And I walked out. No ceremony. No raised voices or slam of a door, just the sound of me locking it from the outside. I didn't check to see who read the letter, didn't wait for a call, didn't leave a forwarding address, because what I left behind wasn't mine anymore. It never had been. That house, the one I had saved with everything I had, didn't feel like home. Not because of the walls, because of the people inside them. People who clapped for Sean's every stumble and rolled their eyes at my every rise. People who saw love as obedience and gratitude as silence. But not anymore. Because that same afternoon, I walked into my new apartment, a 2-bedroom above a bakery that smelled like cinnamon and fresh starts. And I didn't unpack in a rush. I took my time, hung my framed business license on the wall, ordered a real bed, not a couch, bought myself a plant I knew I'd probably forget to water, but loved anyway. And when I sat down that night, in a chair that didn't creak in a space no one mocked, I felt it for the first time in years. A breath I didn't have to hold. It's been 6 months since I walked out. No one calls anymore. Not Sean. Not my mom. Not my dad. And that's okay. Silence used to feel like punishment. Now, it feels like permission. My apartment isn't huge. The floors creak. The oven runs too hot. I've killed 2 houseplants. But when I unlock the door, the air doesn't feel like a test. It feels like mine. I started hanging my own art. Photographs I took while walking to clear my head. Quotes I used to scribble in old notebooks. Reminders of the girl who used to beg for approval. Now they're framed. There's a little shelf in my bedroom that holds the things I couldn't throw away. The bank receipt from the day I paid off their debt. The deed with my name at the top. The goodbye letter I printed for myself. The version I didn't leave behind. Because sometimes closure isn't what you hand to them. It's what you hand to yourself. I used to dream of being seen. Now I dream of being centered. I sleep in a bed I chose. I wake up to silence, not slamming doors or guilt served on a plate with breakfast. I run my small design business out of the second bedroom, what I call the office of no apologies. Clients know me as reliable, professional, kind. They don't know that for years I paid the rent on a home that mocked me. They don't need to, because I don't live there anymore. Not physically, not emotionally. And if you're watching this thinking, how could she do that to her family? Let me say this. I didn't do anything to them. I just stopped letting them do everything to me. That's not revenge. That's reality. That's what happens when the person you treated like an afterthought remembers who she is and becomes impossible to ignore. Now I tell my own story. In every decision, every boundary, every silence that says more than explanation ever could, I'm not angry. I'm awake. And at night, when I finally crawl into bed, no lights left on, no shoes thrown in the hallway, no one shouting from behind a door that used to be mine, I whisper the same line to myself. They took everything I gave and still looked down on me. So I took back what was mine. And now I sleep without apology.